tower near Robinson Lake. This would be at 3301 Macaulay Road, and we're looking at a self-support structure, also known as a lattice tower. The benefit of that type of structure is that it takes up a small footprint as opposed to a guide tower that would have wires and anchors on it to support it, and those take up a lot more space. So this is a relatively small footprint. The purpose of the facility is to provide high-speed data and voice service, so cell phone service, but also high-speed internet access. People will be able to connect to the internet if this is approved via TELUS's Smart Hub product, and that offers speeds up to 25 megabits per second upload and download speeds. So that's enough to support high definition video content, things like Netflix or FaceTime, sharing of large files. It's a level of service that I think would be a great benefit to Robinson Lake, which is currently underserved in that regard. Next slide, please. So 3301 Macaulay Road is, we selected it because it's in a central location, which is critical in terms of us optimizing the service when we're trying to provide not only voice service, but data service. We're finding when we're providing that high-speed wireless internet access that we do need facilities to be reasonably close to the population or the end users. The subject property, though, is sort of on the fringe of that central part of the community. It's a large, actually 230-acre lot with a lot of mature trees on it, which will be a benefit in terms of the fact that only really the top, we think about 15 meters of the tower would be visible, and the bottom portion, really the bottom 2/3, would be screened by these mature trees. Next slide, please. So this aerial photograph shows a lot more clearly the proposed location. So again, it's a large lot. There's a lot of mature trees that we would obviously retain other than in our small footprint. So it's close to the end users, but not sort of, right in people's view, etc. Next slide, please. So this is a very sort of basic preliminary site plan. You can see it's not quite as clear as I would maybe like, but you can see that we would be connecting directly to Macaulay Road. So TELUS would have its own access driveway, mitigating the need for us to build a road all the way across this property. You can see in blue and red there that power and fiber optic cabling would be connected directly from the lines on the street into the compound. So this location is not only good from a service perspective, but also in terms of it has proximity to power, fiber optic lines, and access, which really helps to mitigate really the disturbance to the subject property. Next slide, please. So this is a very preliminary tower profile drawing showing the type of structure that I mentioned earlier. It's a self-support tower or a lattice tower. And again, the benefit of this structure type is that the amount of ground space required is quite minimal compared to, say, a guide tower or other structure type. Next slide, please. So now that you know a little bit about what we're interested in proposing, our only, I guess, ask today would be to seek approval to commence a consultation process. We did pre-consult your planning staff on this proposal, and it was noted that basically the regional district does, at a high level, follow the Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada default process, but that there's a piece that's been added on to that, which is a public meeting. So this default process from, I'll just call it ISED from this point on, Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, also known as ISED, really involves the 3 steps that you see on this slide. There's notification of all property owners within a radius of 3 times the height of the tower. We do a newspaper notice, and then we also conclude with a request for land use concurrence from the Regional District Board. But in addition to that, because there is a protocol in place at your regional district, we would also host a public meeting as an added layer to that process. What we wanted to propose to do, similar to today, is to host that meeting online via Zoom, instead of encouraging people to congregate during COVID at an actual public meeting. So I guess be a digital information session, if you will. And what I was thinking might be a suitable concept would be to invite people to that in our area resident notification and in our newspaper notice as well, so that, you know, anyone that wanted to could come and ask questions and have a little bit of face time. So that's really the end of the presentation, and just wanted to seek your approval to proceed with that process, and I certainly welcome any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Brian, for a very good presentation. And I ask if we've got some, looks like both the directors have some questions. So, Director Erber.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, obviously all rural communities yearn for connectivity, so it's good to see, but as you know, probably sometimes location and public feedback can influence how we go about things. So I'm definitely in favor of consultation. My only feedback would be, if you're going to use some of the slides you had there, it may be good to have a slide that shows sort of the concentric circles from the tower of, you know, how far it's going to range. You know, it might be 25 megabytes right by the tower, but, you know, is it going to be 5 at 1 or 2 kilometers? Those are kind of questions that might be of interest, I think, to the community when you do your presentation. But otherwise, I'm quite pleased to see that move forward.
Absolutely. That's a good point. We can take that back to our engineering group. We do often provide, during public meetings, coverage maps, which provide, of course, just predictive coverage with software. It's sort of hard to tell perfectly how the service would be until it's implemented, because trees and topography can pose a challenge at you know, specific locations, but we will certainly provide that.
Great, thanks. That's all my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have a question from the other director, Director Hamir.
Great, thanks, Brian. Similar question. I was just wondering if you had an idea how many residents would be benefiting from the coverage of that tower?
That's a good question. I actually do not have that data with me here. We could get that, though, I think. A lot of our assessments are more based on the geographic range that we would service, and I suppose we could overlay that perhaps on a GIS map to determine how many households or people would fall within that. So I don't know that we have that data offhand, but I think it would be reasonably straightforward to put that together for sure. Another thing we do have, and I don't know if we have it for this site in full transparency, but a lot of our files are driven by years of customer complaints regarding a lack of service. And so TELUS is keeping track of things like blocked and dropped calls on the network, as well as the number of customer complaints that have been coming in. And that might also be of interest. We often share that transparently, just to show that, you know, this isn't always just TELUS pushing forward with a project. A lot of times it's driven by demand and people that are wanting the service.
Great. That actually led into my next question. I was wondering how you decided to choose this area. And I was wondering if it was because of the density of housing close by, the number of residents, but you've alluded to sort of geographical area in terms of penetration of, I guess, Wi-Fi. Because we do know in other areas of the regional district, particularly Dove Creek, that's another area that has very low, connectivity. So it was just a question around how TELUS decides where to put, and what's the business case for putting up a tower.
Yeah, so I'm not directly involved in the business case piece, but I'll get back to you with that. There is an analysis, and it goes into a business case spreadsheet based on a variety of factors, and certainly population is one of them. And then, as I mentioned, we do factor in things like customer complaints and blocked and dropped calls, and all of that data is another layer that goes into it as well. But certainly there does need to be, a certain threshold of population typically, because the upfront capital costs of the infrastructure can be quite high. One way I understand that the business case has been more successful in smaller population areas has been by have added into that business case the potential benefit that would be derived not just from wireless service for cell phone calls, but also for internet access, wireless high-speed internet access. Thinking about adding that into the business case has enabled TELUS to, I guess, justify deploying the service in areas that previously wouldn't have qualified.
That's great to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, you seem to have answered some of my questions as well, and I think we all realize that Canada is a nation divided in two, where people do have access to broadband and people who don't have access to broadband, and we know that it's becoming more an essential service, like water or sewer or garbage pickup. We've got people that, obviously with COVID, we got people that work from home. We have people that run their businesses from home. We've got education, where there's a two-tier education system for the people that don't have access for their kids. So it's more important than ever. It's not just Netflix. So I applaud you, and hope you are thorough and with the consultation with the public up there. I would also like to say that you're also reaching across the Oyster River into Strathcona Regional District. I'm just wondering, is there any consultation with that already?
Actually, it's funny you ask, because I mistakenly thought that this proposal was in the other regional district, and I reached out to them first. And they corrected me and pointed me towards your organization. So I don't know if I could call that a fulsome consultation, as it were, but they are aware and have had an opportunity to comment on it. And certainly, anyone can comment based on the newspaper notice. And we will reach out to them if they want to discuss it further. Absolutely.
Thanks very much, and I will. We already had a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Another question. Dr. Mir?
It's actually a question to staff. Are staff looking for a formal motion to support TELUS moving forward with consultation?
That's the request that TELUS has for you. So in order to assist them in this process, that would be in order, okay. Yes.
I'd support that. I'll make the motion after we receive.
Okay, we have the receipt motion on the table, so call the question on receipt. All in favor? Dr. Mir?
And I'll make the motion that the Electoral Area Service Committee support TELUS to proceed with a public consultation process.
Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much for your time.
And moving on to a management report for receipt. Do we have any questions on the management report? Director Amir.
Not so much about what's on the report, but what's not and not on the agenda. I know this has just been spoken about kind of informally, but I was wondering if staff was going to come forward with a proposal for a grant application for an ag area plan.
That is in the works. Ton, will you be able to update, please? Thank you.
Tom.
To the chair, to Director Hamir. Yeah, that's correct. The goal is staff is planning to send a staff report to the late October ESC meeting. I think it's in I think it's October the 24th or 5th. Is there a meeting then?
So it'll come to board or to?
It will come to the committee. We know that the deadline for this grant is October the 31st. So we're trying to get this in before that.
Oh, okay, so probably to the board meeting, because I think we only meet once this month, right? So, okay, to the board. Great.
Apologize.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, and something I guess I'm surprised is not on the management report is also when we might expect something back from the garbage and recycling study that we've been in consultation, public consultation we've been doing.
Mr. Chair and Directors, yes, the extensive consultation has been taken with respect to the potential of a rural garbage collection service. The greatest amount of feedback we've ever received on such an inquiry. We are undertaking an analysis of that, and at the next regular meeting of the EA directors, you'll receive the report that will summarize all of that input.
Looking forward to it. Any further discussion on receive the management report? Seeing none, call question. All in favor? That carries. All right, now we have minutes from the Advisory Planning Commission for Area A, C, and B. Move all three. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, call the question on receipt. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Now, Electoral Area B Development Variance Permit DV2B20 1904 Mariner Road for receipt. Move on receipt and over to CEO for introductions.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And Dylan Thiessen is here, planner for the regional district. He will outline not only this, but the next application too, so items number 2 and 3. And we'll also introduce any of the applicants and answer any of your questions.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. So we have received a development variance permit application to reduce the rear yard setback for the conversion of an accessory building into a secondary dwelling. The setback reduction would be from 7.5 meters to 3 meters for the foundation of the building and from 5.5 meters to 2.7 meters for the eaves. The structure as a non-residential accessory building meets the current minimum setbacks, but section 315, subsection 3I of the zoning bylaw stipulates that the siting of a secondary dwelling unit shall be in accordance with the principal structure setbacks, which are 7.5 meters from the front and rear lot lines in this case. The subject property is owned Country Residential 1. It is approximately 0.17 hectares in size and features a detached dwelling unit, accessory building, and small outbuilding. The Advisory Planning Commission considered this file at their September 22nd meeting and voted to support the application going forward. In addition, all properties within a 100-meter radius of the subject property were mailed a notice and provided with an opportunity to comment on the application. Staff received correspondence from 3 neighboring properties, 2 of which were in opposition to the application. Staff are recommending that the EASC support the variance as the existing setback leaves enough space for access and building maintenance, and the applicants are willing to provide additional screening measures. I believe the applicant is in attendance today to speak on the application, and I'm happy to take any questions afterward as well.
Thank you very much. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm the applicant.
I'll get you to stand up at the microphone there, Amanda. There you go. Thank you.
Test. Ooh. So yeah, we own 1904 Mariner Road, and we have that accessory building that we would like to convert into a secondary dwelling for some aging family members. We have 2 parents that are in quite bad health right now. And so right now where the house sits, obviously we need this variance. And I just wanted to let the people know that are in opposition. I do feel that where the building currently sits does provide them more privacy than what our alternative option would be. We currently use this outbuilding for building materials because we do a renovation about once a year or twice a year. I'm a real estate agent, so I've got lots of real estate interest anyway. So if right now we currently store building materials in that building, which is a problem that we have with developing this building into a dwelling, because it leaves us this void of storage. So if we turn this building into a dwelling at this point, we would just be building an accessory building to store our building supplies in. But if we have to move the building 4.5 meters back, then we would not require a variance to turn it into a carriage house, to put it onto a 2-bay garage with stairs that go up to the dwelling. So in that case, it would be moved closer to the neighboring property, be closer to your property, and then 4.5 meters further back from your property, but it would be a 2-story dwelling. And I mean, I personally wouldn't want a 2-story building looking into my yard. So where it sits right now, we could build a Leylande cypress cedar hedge around, and we could do some new fencing between our neighbors, just to ensure that everyone has as much privacy. Because I know out in the country, we do like to have some privacy. So, and just to reiterate, we do not need a variance to turn that building into a 2nd-story carriage house. That would solve our problem of storing our building materials. And we have already had the building signed off by an engineer. We had it approved to move on to the back of our house as a rec room last year. So the engineer has signed off that the building could be moved and could be used as living space. So anyway, I feel like it's better for our family members that will be living there to have privacy where it is now. And I feel, you know, if I was the neighbors, I would prefer to have the building where it is now rather than having a 2-story building. And so that's all. Did anyone have any questions?
Yes, they do, actually. Director Hamir.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. And thank you for your presentation. So I just want to confirm your plans right now, if the building stays where it is, it would stay as a 1-story?
Yes.
Okay, and that your aging parents would then be able to stay there as
Correct.
is. Are there any other modifications you'd be doing to the building, kind of, I don't need to know internally, but outside?
No, we would have to upgrade some of the windows. That's when we got our permit to put that accessory building onto the back of our current home. We would have had to upgrade some of the windows, but besides that, no, it's kind of to lock up.
Okay. And I guess my second question is to staff then. I just want to confirm some of the statements around if the building was moved, it could be turned into a 2-story building with a garage that would be kind of in the back. Is that right? That's a possibility?
Thank you, Director, for your question. Yes, that is. So what the applicant is saying is that if the variance is not approved, they would relocate the building to meet the 7.5 meter setback. At that point, it would be their choice whether they wanted to keep it as is, or they could build within the 8-meter height limit without a variance, a carriage house.
Okay. So I guess my concern then is just for future owners. If this is permitted as a secondary dwelling as is, if a future owner wanted to then put it up to a 2nd story where it currently is, and we've already given that permission that that it can be lived in, what would be would there be any permit that's required for the 2 stories? If you could sort of, in the future, explain what a new owner might be able to do.
I will try to answer that. To the chair, to Director Hummer, great question. So if the board decides to support this application for the request of the rear yard setback, and if the current owner or the new owners decide to put a second story to that, that second story would have to meet their that variance approval that the board approved. So this building has the potential to go up to second story to 2 stories, but would have to meet that variance.
So it wouldn't fall under the variance that we're giving it right now?
It would. So if their current owner or the future owner decides to put a second story to their approved variance as of the request today, that second story would have to meet their approved variance setback.
Okay, I think I understand. Thanks.
Can I comment on that? I mean, I have no way of knowing for sure what a future owner would do, but the house does currently have a very large attached 2-bay garage. So I think it would be unusual we just have an unusual amount of, we've got 5 kids and we've got a lot of building supplies that we store. And plus all the family members seem to like to store things in our accessory buildings as well. So I think it would be unusual for someone to wish to have an additional secondary garage because the current garage is so large.
Okay, any other questions from the directors? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for coming up and explaining a few things to the committee.
Okay.
And excuse you.
Thank you.
We have to do a little receiving, I guess. So we're on receipt. So receive the report. All in favor? That carries. Now we have some correspondence from David Burns. Moving second on the correspondence. Okay, on that, call the question. All in favor? And I guess a motion to consider the addendum. There's some more correspondence in the addendum as well. Moved and seconded? Okay. So now a motion to receive the correspondence on the addendum. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that correspondence? Call the question on that. All in favor of the correspondence? Very good. So that brings us to a point where, is there anybody in the gallery wishing to speak on this matter? Okay, well, if you come up and to the microphone and just give us your name and where you live.
Hello. I too would like to thank the Comox First Nation for allowing us to stay here. We're all temporary residents on Turtle Island. Thank you. So yes, my name is Dave Burns. I live at 1891 Avonlea Road. I share approximately 80% of my backyard fence frontage with Mrs. Amanda Racine of said address. With regards to the variance for 1904 Mariner Road, one of my concerns is that this easement or variance will be a permanent decision, which will validate an incorrect decision from many years ago. Is it okay if I talk about the letter that came from the CVRD that was composed on the 24th and mailed out on the 25th? So I can talk about that too. Yeah, so I only received any type of paperwork concerning this issue a Wednesday afternoon, and I had until Friday at noon to compose any type of response, which I feel is not an appropriate amount of time. I heard somewhere that 10 days upon receipt, or that the correspondence should get to you within 10 days. So not enough time to prepare for this, obviously. I believe this all began back on July 30th. And if that's so, the idea for this must have been conceived at least on the 29th of July. But like I said, I didn't receive any correspondence until Wednesday of last week. So I find that kind of strange. Certainly an October surprise for me. I also didn't get the same information as my neighbors. I actually got some information Friday morning at 11:30. So once again, half an hour before the email deadline for a response. Basically, I feel that the best thing to do is to make everything legal. And that way it's set for the future the way it should be in the present. And it won't be a problem for future owners. I also don't want the value of my house to go down because there's another domicile looking into my backyard. I do find my backyard is my place of solitude. I have some chronic pain and some PTSD, so I really enjoy my privacy. With regards to the backyard and being able to see into the backyard, I wish to grow my 4 legal cannabis plants, which at present I would not be able to do. It's not a matter of your neighbors seeing over your fence and seeing your cannabis plants and turning a blind eye. They could have visitors, or the fire department, or the police could be there, or a contractor. So I worry that my charter rights would be infringed upon if there's a domicile that looks down into my yard and sees my medical plants. I have been a medical patient for 10 years. So well before legalization came to everybody else, I was already getting my medicine, which I truly appreciate. I also want to bring into question the photographs in the handout. So figure 4 is correct. It shows the eastern side. Figure 5 also shows the eastern side with most of the foreground taken up with dirt and most of the building taken up the rest. So it doesn't really give you a good idea of the space between the building and the fence. So I haven't measured that distance physically because it's not my property to go onto. But I can tell you from 18 and a half years in the service, I can measure stuff with my eyes pretty good, up to about 300 meters very accurately. So 3 meters should be something I can look at and decide with my eye and judge. And if that building right now as it sits is 3 meters, I'd be surprised. I think the actual distance is probably closer to 285 centimeters. And I have a prop if anybody wants to see what 6 feet looks like, and then the actual distance. So I'm 183 centimeters, making 6 feet tall. So this is 3 meters right here. I'm 6 feet tall, 183 centimeters. And I don't honestly believe that that's actually 3 meters there right now in reality. So I'm getting low on energy, so I just like to say that I think it's best if we just bring this into legality, move the building, do 2 stories, garage, whatever you want, but leave me my space. Like, bylaws are there to protect everybody. So that's what I'd like to be seeing. So in some situations, it's better to beg for forgiveness than to ask permission. And I think this is kind of like a quasi situation like that. Certain situations call for begging for forgiveness in lieu of asking for permission. The greater good, the rule of law, protecting life and property. I don't think this situation falls into that category. Right now, I have only a modest amount of privacy due to the nuisance trees and brambles and bushes that I've let grown up in the back corner. But those are just temporary, they won't be there forever. And even planting a hedge is not a forever thing. It's organic, it can be removed at any time. Also, apparently it takes many, many years for hedges to grow to maturity to provide that privacy. So I would ask that this be reviewed, that the variance be denied, that everything be brought into legality. Everybody will be happy, and it'll be permanent for now and into the future for everybody. Sorry I'm running low on energy, but I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I'm available for questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if you stand up to the mic, we got some questions.
Sorry, this is, it's a question to staff. So
Oh, okay.
If you want to sit, you can.
You're off the hook.
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to confirm that in general, our procedure has been to send out the mail outs to the neighbors after the area committees have been, after like the proposals have been seen by the our local area committees, our APCs.
Generally, that's how it goes, simply because APC meetings generally happen before the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. However, we are legislatively required by the Local Government Act to send them out 10 days prior to the date of the meeting that they are being considered at.
Okay, so the APC wouldn't have seen any of the responses because the letters wouldn't have necessarily gone out, or
that's correct.
Okay, all right, that was just my my question. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll ask again if there's anybody wishing to speak on the matter, and if so, step up to the lectern and just say who you are, where you live.
Good afternoon. My name's Jeannie Garrick. I'm the direct neighbor at 1902. I submitted pictures and I submitted a letter on my behalf and my concerns. I hope that you've viewed them.
Yep.
The pictures that have been provided by Ms. Racine are not pictures that are currently depict how it looks, and therefore I tried to show you from 10 paces from my home, my private home, into my lawn to give you an idea of the pictures that show the current building that's in question, where it sits and how it sits looking into my yard in every aspect as it sits right now. My concern is that the owner is requesting a variance, which will make this a secondary home. As a secondary home, I believe that we have bylaws that we all comply with. If I was building a home currently today, I would have to follow those bylaws. And as a law-abiding citizen, I would. I have no problem with her following the same letter of law that I would follow. I have some concerns as well when it comes to a statement that was a letter left in my driveway that I received on October the 1st, whereas I received the letter from your district on Wednesday. Actually, it was latter part of the day, so I didn't collect my mail until Thursday morning, as I only make the walk once a day, if that. My concern is that in her letter that I found on my driveway, stated the fact about privacy, about her ailing parents. Well, I'm in senior years as well, and I deserve the same courtesy and the same respect for privacy. I have my issues, and I'm sure her family members do as well. The letter here that she had stated was about their privacy and about her two-story building, how it would inconvenience her aging parents with no concern for her neighbors that are aging and in their senior years as well. I am very happy to have her comply with the letter of the law, to move her building and to do the right thing. And I oppose the variance that she has put forward in a very quick, not a meeting of the minds, not a knock at my door, no question to me directly with concern of myself and my well-being. So I put this out to you to make your decision, and if you could take the time to ponder that thought and go over the letters and pictures that I've already submitted prior. I believe I dropped them off Friday prior to the 12 o'clock deadline. And I thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Would you be willing to take questions? Is it a question for the comment? We're fine? Okay.
I can speak. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for those comments. Actually, I can't see you behind the podium. Sorry. But to the two of you, thank you for the comments so far, and I don't know if we'll see more. Just for a point of clarification, perhaps, and I do appreciate those. I live in a similar kind of situation with smaller lots, and I do appreciate that people are in tight quarters and everything impacts one another. But one small point, I think, maybe checking in with staff. So when we talk about the legality, yes, we have our set of bylaws that sort of set the foundation for how people utilize zoning across the areas and across municipalities. But these processes that we have right now are, I just want to clarify, are also part of the legal tools that we have, and a lot of variances that come sometimes, as Wes pointed out, maybe for historical reason or convenience. And sometimes we do see that nobody has issues. So I wouldn't want to think that anyone to think that the outcome of the process would lead to any kind of illegal situation. I think it's this discussion we're having both between neighbors and the regional district is really to set out whether a variance as a legal tool is appropriate. And so I just thought I would try to clarify that a little bit so that we understand that that will be the outcome one way or the other. But I do appreciate those comments. So my comment back is, so far is, I do see that the time allowed for reflection and consideration of the proposal seemed a little bit short. So maybe further to Dr. Hamir's question. So I guess we hadn't this hasn't gone to the APC. In a normal process, those types of application will often go to the APC. Is that correct?
Sorry, yeah, response through the chair to Director Arbor. It has gone to APC.
Oh, it has.
Yeah, no, the situation is that normally the Advisory Planning Commission would not consider neighbor comments. They just look at the application free from staff recommendation as well. It's, supposed to be their opportunity to provide their comments free from any type of other external interference.
Got it.
And that the adjacent neighbor letters are particularly relevant to this committee meeting, and they have to be sent 10 days prior to this meeting.
Got it. Sorry, I missed that bit. Okay, I'll return it to the chair for now.
Thank you very much.
Nobody has a question for me at all? Like everything I said, you guys understood?
I'm sorry, sir. You're out of order. Hang on. Do you want to be recognized again for a second time? Step up to the podium then.
Yes, I wasn't sure if I made myself clear. I said I'd be available for comments afterwards, but
Yeah.
now that we're on the record, I just want to know if anybody has any type of question for me whatsoever. I just want to make sure that all my points were clear and concise.
Okay, we have a question from Director Arbor.
Thanks. And yeah, you coming up to the podium to trigger me, so that's great. So I guess a key question for me in this case is the full understanding that if they did it within the existing bylaw without a variance, you could end up with an outcome with maybe a two-story building rather than what I understand is currently being planned with one level. So, and that to you would be a better outcome than the current situation?
I would like to go with whatever is the norm right now, whatever the normal procedures are, well, without the variance.
Okay.
So like the structure actually moving back to 7.5 and then doing whatever they would like with it.
Okay.
And was I clear about the existing distance right now that it's probably already less than 3 meters? Is that clear?
Yeah, actually, I appreciated you bringing the tape and I looked at the picture, so I did appreciate that. And at the end of the day, I think we would have to rely on documents. I'm sure that professionals would submit and regional district staff would have to verify prior to any.
Because if that survey is incorrect, it might be beneficial to pull some random samples of surveys by that person or company to check the accuracy.
Why don't we get a bit of staff comment on that? I'm sure they might be able to answer that concern.
Yeah.
Over to staff.
Thank you for that. Just to clarify, yeah, I did crop the image just to enlarge it for purposes of attaching it as a figure, but it is from a legal survey. And part of the process from converting an accessory building into a secondary dwelling is a building permit process to get the occupancy permit. That will involve a number of things from septic to the structure of the building as well. It also includes the siting of the building, so that will be reconfirmed as well at that stage. But this variance is based on the legal survey that was provided, and the applicant is only doing themselves a disservice if it is inaccurate. Staff has no reason to believe that it's inaccurate at this time.
Thank you.
So hopefully that clarifies for both you and I that if it was inaccurate, it would have to be corrected at the time of the building permit to respect whatever was described.
Right.
Right. So yeah, but I understand that concern. So thank you for those comments and thanks for coming back for.
Yes, thank you very much. David Burns, BYRNES. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
May I address the podium again as well?
Okay, we'll give you the leniency to do one more.
There was one more. I'm very nervous. So I wasn't sure if I had clarified that her following the letter of the law by moving the building, whether it is, as long as it complies with all of the bylaws, but leaving it where it is, I oppose that. Her moving it and doing it properly the way that it is, it doesn't sit on a foundation right now, so she would have to do a foundation and all of that anyway. So moving it and doing it properly according to the bylaw and whatever else that she had planned that follows and complies with the letter of the law. That part is what I wanted to clarify. I wasn't sure if I got that part out or not, but as it sits, I oppose how it is. Thanks for letting me talk again.
Thank you very much. Sure.
Thank you.
This is our very first and only matinee meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee. Normally we do this at 10 o'clock in the morning, so.
A couple of things. Yes, the survey was done legally. That's the only way I know the measurements. I've never measured it myself. A second note is I was told by people I spoke to at the regional district that we won't necessarily need to put a foundation under it, just depending on what the engineer said, and the engineer has said it's okay as is. And then thirdly, I mean, I wasn't going to bring this up, but if it adds a little bit more perspective, my neighboring neighbors, their dwelling is actually within, I would say, within 3 meters of the back of the property. I think originally when it was built as a shop, and then the previous owner just sort of finished it into a house. So their current dwelling is within 3 meters of the back of the property, and they also have a secondary living space with a toilet right on the fence line. the structure forms.
Okay, I'm going
part
to
of the
stop you
fence.
right there because this is getting off topic.
So, yeah, just.
You know, this is
for
a
some
know your,
perspective.
what am I? And I think,
Yeah.
you know, we're actually dealing with a variance here that is going through process. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Director. Sorry.
Yeah, perhaps one final question from me, for either for staff or for the applicant. So everybody's on septic, I guess, in those neighborhoods. So would moving the building have any potential impact on, I know, septic distances and all this? Okay, everybody's nodding no. Thank you, because that might have entered into my consideration.
To the staff.
Thank you, Director Arbor. Through Chair to Director Arbor, just for further confirmation, part of getting that occupancy permit in the building permit phase would involve taking into account the capacity of the septic system, whether or not it could service 2 dwelling units or not. The applicant would certainly have to bring that up to code based on what the building inspectors see. And whether that's a capacity issue or whether it's a location issue, if they were to relocate the accessory building to respect the 7.5 meter setback, that would be dealt with either way.
Thank you. I think we're at a point where we should maybe receive the further presentations we just got as well. So if you want to move that. Any discussion? All in favor? And that carries. So I think we've received everything up to this point, including the verbal presentations at the end. So that brings us to the recommendation, or not. Director Arbor, or sorry, Director Hamir.
Thank you. You know, this has been a difficult application to kind of consider. You know, and I really, I am a huge proponent for densification and secondary dwellings for affordable housing, and I really hope that the applicant's parents have the opportunity to move onto the property with that family. I think that really makes sense. And normally, you know, I would be okay with just converting an accessory building as is, but you know, the neighbors bringing up the issues that they have, plus the fact that the building isn't on a permanent foundation and it is movable. To me, I think I would like to proceed in a way that for future eliminates the idea of a 2-story building in the future with whoever owns this property being able to build 2 stories this close to neighbors. So I'm going to move to deny the application. And if it gets a second, we can discuss.
Perhaps referral back to staff might be more in order. See if they can work something out between the parties.
Is that, I'm happy to change if that's the.
I'll try to answer that to the chair and to the directors. You may recall we have, you have put a resolution down to ask staff to work with the neighbors to see if there is a resolution where we can compromise.
Yeah.
I think we did that a couple of them last year or the year before.
We did.
As staff, we can contact the surrounding neighbors and the applicant to see if we could find a compromise somewhere and report back to the committee at a later date.
Great. Okay, I will rescind my motion then and move to refer this back to staff to come up with a compromise.
Always good policy. Compromise makes the world go round. You have a seconder for that? Okay. All in favor? That carries. This will be coming before us again, I'm sure. All right, so now we're on Electoral Area C. That's God's country for everybody. Development Variance Permit 2C20-4218 Forbidden Plateau Road for receipt. Moving second on receipt and over to CEO for introductions.
And Chair and Directors, Dylan will introduce this report as well and help to answer any of your questions.
Thanks again, Russell, for that introduction. To the chair and to the committee members, this second development variance permit application that we're talking about today has been received in order to increase the maximum allowable floor area among all accessory buildings on the property from 300 square meters to 345 square meters. The subject property is quite large. It is just under 2.5 hectares in size. It is zoned rural 8 and is heavily forested. Currently on the property is a trailer, an existing accessory building, and a detached dwelling that is under construction. The applicants are planning on constructing a tall accessory building that will bring them just under the 300 square meter limit. Should the variance be approved, they would add 30 square meters of floor area as a second floor to this building, as well as another much smaller 15 square meter outbuilding. The Advisory Planning Commission considered this file at their September meeting and voted to support the application going forward. In addition, staff received correspondence from one adjacent property owner who is in support of the application. Staff are recommending that the Electoral Area Services Committee support the application as it will not detract from the rural character or form of the neighborhood, which is the main reason behind limiting the total combined floor area of accessory buildings. I will note that I believe the applicant is on the line, but that she has expressed she does not wish to speak, and that if possible, questions from the committee members be directed to staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members to be directed at staff? Director Mayor.
So did we get any response from neighbors who were opposed?
No.
No, just the one in total.
Thank you.
There's no addendum on this one. Okay, so we're good to go on receipt. Call the question, all in favor? And there is correspondence to receipt as well. Move the second on receipt. In favor? Any opposed? That carries. No addendum. There's nobody in the gallery. So that brings us to the recommendation. Move and second. Okay, and move and second on the recommendation. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, call the question on that. All in favor? That's unanimous. Okay. Animal control bylaw amendments. Report for receipt, moved and seconded. CEO?
Thank you, Chair and Directors, and I welcome Amanda Yasinski to introduce this report and answer any of your questions.
Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Good afternoon through the CEO to the chair. This report outlines the legal review staff undertook with the assistance of a law firm to review and update the existing animal control bylaw, specifically with the lens of looking at our dangerous dog language and policies within that bylaw. Staff initiated a full legal review of our existing bylaw in 2020. The purpose of the review was to update the animal control bylaw around dangerous dogs and introduce an accompanying policy. The review also looked at dog license fees, general updates, and suggested language around aggressive dogs. Staff also consulted with our current animal control providers and the SPCA, who provides kenneling service, on the review and within the proposed changes. Following this review, proposals for amendments to the existing bylaw include addition of an aggressive dog definition and requirements to clarify the differences in investigative steps required to deal with aggressive and/or dangerous dogs. Current bylaw only speaks to dangerous dogs, so our options were always to elevate even minor bites to dangerous. There was no step in between. So we'd seen some other bylaws and felt that there was still potential for public safety with these, and we would like to monitor them more. But to elevate to a dangerous dog is quite a lengthy procedure, and sometimes extreme for some of the cases we've been dealing with. Additional proposed amendments with specific requirements for securing dangerous dogs, including a secure enclosure definition, approved signage, and the addition of a dangerous dog service fee set out at $50 on top of the standard and required license fee and specific impound fees for dangerous dogs. The dangerous dog license fee is something that staff, myself, has brought forward a couple turns around budget season now. The amount of time that goes into these files and to keep up, we still keep them on the registry every year. We still have to confirm where their address is if they've moved and notify those jurisdictions. So that service fee is to offset some of the administration costs and continuing on with those files once a dog's been deemed dangerous. The secure enclosure definition is quite specific and also provides animal control officers the ability to increase the requirements in extreme cases if they feel warranted. There's a set standard for that enclosure with the option for more if they feel it's required. Omitting the noisy dog section entirely out of the existing bylaw and applying the CVRD's existing noise control bylaw to better address those complaints. Through the review, it came about that the language in the animal control bylaw was almost contradictory to our existing noise bylaw speaking to noisy dogs. The language in the noise bylaw is stronger in regards to animal noise. So it was recommended to ensure consistency for all noise complaints relating to dogs. The animal control officers moving forward apply the language in the noise bylaw for barking complaints. So we're suggesting that we omit the language for noisy in the animal control bylaw. In addition, under licensing, providing an exemption for license fees for registered service dogs at the discretion of animal control and bylaw. This comes up every so often for a licensed service dog or aid dog to be exempt from the licenses. An increase of license fees, additionally, to be in line with the surrounding municipalities. The increase would be from $5 to $10. So currently for an altered dog, it's $5. We're looking to increase it to $10, and from $15 to $25 for an unaltered dog. This is in average with the surrounding municipalities. So I figured them out to be around 10 to 30 on average. I included SRD as well in that, as well as our neighboring municipalities. This increase would take place as of January 1st, 2021, with the current pricing to run the duration of the year. Our licenses go on sale November 1st to give people a chance to adjust to the increase and hopefully have some incentive to purchase before the end of the year. The changes in license fees would be part of our annual dog licensing campaign and rolled into that as well. These changes are all outlined in Appendix A of the staff report as well. From this review, it was also strongly recommended that the CVRD adopt a policy to address dangerous dogs, a standalone policy from the bylaw policy. Such a policy will assist the animal control officers as well as CVRD staff when investigating and enforcing the animal control bylaw when it comes to aggressive and dangerous dogs. It had been noted on some previous dangerous dog files that there weren't any guidelines for staff or the contractors to follow. Unfortunately, these were in some very extreme cases, and this caused our investigation and findings to be challenged. The policy, as outlined, is attached as Appendix B. This policy would also assist greatly when educating and helping the public, both the dog owner and possibly the complainant or affected parties, understand why a decision was made and why a dog may or may not be designated or elevated to dangerous dog. And finally, with outlined changes in the animal control bylaw, there will be a required update to the MTI bylaw to capture any changes to the ticketing schedule, specifically the addition of the aggressive dogs in the bylaw and having us omit noisy dogs. So that would come off the ticketing for that. There are no proposed increases to fine amounts in the ticketing bylaw at all. So the recommendations on this report are that the board consider giving readings to bylaw number 625, being the Comox Valley Electoral Areas Animal Control Bylaw, number 100, 2010, amendment number 1, as attached in the staff report. And further that, the board consider giving readings to bylaw 627, being Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw 104, 2010, amendment number 19, to reflect the changes outlined in the staff report. Finally, that the proposed dog enforcement policy and flow chart attached to the staff report be approved as well. I can answer any questions as well.
Thank you very much. And Director Arbor, you're first.
Thank you. It looks like a good, thoughtful review of ABADA and proposed amendments. And just to refresh our memory and inform the public, perhaps, how many, with this new bylaw, how many currently do we have that are dangerous dogs? And do you expect this policy would change that number that are classified as such?
Oh, sorry. It's not working. There we go. Try again. There you go. Are you on now? Yes, I can see you, Greg. It's hard to see you down there because it's so bright. Whatever that orb in the sky that gives out all that sunshine, I don't know where that comes from.
Through the chair, sorry. Currently, I believe we have around 6 dangerous dogs on the registry. Some have moved off and out of area, and some have deceased over the years. I don't see an increase. Aggressive dogs will still be tracked in the same manner. You may even see, excuse me, a decrease in a way that, sorry, that some of the dogs, now if we had an aggressive dog option, especially on maybe younger dogs, that we keep them at that level until they warrant a change further on to the dangerous dog registry. But I don't see an increase with the language. The language for dangerous dog in the bylaw has not changed. It's out of the community charter. It's not going to increase our application for them for sure.
That's great, thank you. And we will still look at the possibility of extending the service to Hornby and Dandenong. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Did I hear that correctly? Thank you. And Dr. Hemier.
Right, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Amanda. Yes, I also wanted to say thanks for doing such a great review of the bylaw. When was the last time that the prices were changed for the licenses, or have they ever? Like $5 just always seemed really low to me. So
yeah, through the chair, I don't believe they've ever been as far back. They've been set so early 80s.
Okay.
At the time, it was probably on par with similar regional districts and surrounding municipalities across the province. I can say with our current fee schedule, we are the lowest, only lower being if someone didn't have the service or licenses at all. So it was due. It was due.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So thanks for looking at that. And I like the idea of having a bit of leeway in there if people want to get into the $5. They've got a couple of months to buy their licenses at the end of the year, and it's a calendar year, or it's a full year for their license.
It is. It's a full year. So
Okay.
the licenses expire December 31st.
Okay.
For those of us that have dogs, and the new licenses can be purchased just prior to that expiration too. So
Okay. So those who purchase in November wouldn't have to then repurchase until the next year. Okay. Great. So regarding the aggressive designation, I just wanted to sort of double check, because I've had a couple of people tell me incidents, and I want to see like what would this dog be kind of labeled as. So friends who are farmers have had neighbor dogs come onto their property and attack and kill chickens and ducks.
Yeah.
And so for a single incident like that, if we were able to establish that which neighbor and which dog that was, would one incident then allow us to say that this is an aggressive dog?
Typically, if we had good witness statements and we're confident that the dog and owner correlated to that incident, we don't always get that luxury with the livestock. Sometimes the dogs go home, we're not sure where they came from. We would look at elevating it to that aggressive.
Yeah.
If it was something that was happening routinely. it may be more enforcement plus elevating it further to have,
Okay.
have it contained.
So I'm assuming if, no one was able to sort of see it happen, is it my understanding that up to 3 incidences were required previously before a designation happened, is this going to change that?
Some bylaws, not ours, are set with the 3-strike premise. Ours is not. It is really just set on the circumstances of the event or the complaint. So it could be something, an attack, a bite, that is so aggressive or serious that it's elevated just automatically. It's one. It's just whatever instance.
Mm-hmm.
If it's chasing, harassing, maybe stalking the fence line,
Yeah.
kind of thinking about those chickens, then we'd be looking at potential aggressive. But there's no 3-strike. It could be something, unfortunately, one time that's bad enough to elevate to the top.
So now if a dog is declared aggressive, we're asking the owner then to do a few things, and that's posting that notice. Is that?
The notice is for the dangerous dog.
Okay.
Aggressive dog, they may be required to muzzle off property, may be required to secure, additionally. We've had some dogs in the past where we've had to no-go them to parks for the owner's inability to follow rules or keep that dog under control. So it really would rely on the owner and see what if the owner could abide by those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do we ever ask that owners take some kind of training with their dog? And is that part of the bylaw, or is that just a suggestion?
It's sometimes a suggestion. With the dangerous dog declarations, it's almost always a requirement.
Okay, but not with an aggressive dog?
Not with the aggressive, no. It could be. We can ask for more. If we were looking to ask for that type of training and we'd only designate it at aggressive, we'd likely be looking at maybe elevating it anyway.
Okay, and so I guess
it's all dependent on the circumstances.
Okay.
Of what we have.
So it's up to the officer who's attending to kind of give their reasonings for what their recommendations are and their decisions.
All of these go through full review from the officer and then myself. So we're hoping with the policy that helps us even more go through. We get challenged quite often from the owner, and a lot of it is, does the officer feel the owner actually can follow these rules? Will the owner do the right thing and get the extra training and be able to keep the dog confined and stay away from the busy parks? So the requirements and the basically the paperwork to track these and giving those dog owners the chance at aggressive, if they're going to not abide and not follow through, then that's on them. Then we would have no choice to do further enforcement.
I guess there's been some recent incidents up at Mount Washington with aggressive dogs on retractable leashes and having incidences that I guess were witnessed. So moving forward, if that were to happen again, and someone was able to witness that and sort of you had all of that documentation, if that dog was then again labeled aggressive, would they be able to continue walking up at Mount Washington, or they'd have to be muzzled in a non-retractable leash? Is that what we're asking?
Non-retractable is what we're asking. I'm not aware of any incidents up Mount Washington. It would be, it's private property up there. So that would be up to the resort if they wanted to, or the strata to go there and ban. That's not something we could.
Okay, because that's outside our jurisdiction.
As far as banning them from a private property. Yes.
Okay. I think there are notices already in sort of warning dog walkers of the possibility of a ban. So, okay, this comes into mind. And then lastly, just on the noise bylaw. So again, if a neighbor or a resident has written to me and said, their neighbor has a really noisy dog. So previously under this bylaw, I'm just wondering what's changed. Like what can our bylaw officers do now that the noise part has been taken out and we're just using our noise bylaw versus what was there before?
What was existing, or what is existing in the animal control bylaw, is a version of what is in the noise control bylaw. So
Okay.
from the review found that the noise control wording was stronger and tighter. We've had successful prosecutions through the noise control bylaw on municipal tickets. So it hasn't changed our approach to, we still would require, quite often we use noise logs for the neighbors to fill out to see if there's violations occurring. Unfortunately, we can't move forward if residents that are affected by the barking are not willing to help us participate through court for ticketing. Let's hope that one visit does the trick. That's not the case. We try our best to capture the barking ourselves, but if it's something that's off hours or overnight, we do require the neighbors to kind of help us out with that, as onerous as it is. It's usually where our enforcement drops off with barking. It is a lot of work, and the neighbors affected may not want to proceed through court. They don't want to be part of that process, which is fine. It's usually when we get a little bit blocked on our enforcement with barking. But our approach, our ticketing, when we would ticket, our thresholds, and how we'd administer the barking complaints will not change. This is the language is stronger. Currently in the animal control bylaw, it's 5 minutes or anything sporadic that is up to 5 minutes in a 15-minute period, and then is repeated in 72 hours. So it's quite cumbersome to enforce how it's written currently.
Okay.
So we're hoping with using the noise sections, animal control would just have the ability to enforce the noise section in the noise bylaw, not the entire bylaw, just the noise section.
I think we'll have opportunity to talk about the noise bylaw next. Okay for now?
Yep.
Very good. I have a couple of questions. When you talk about aggressive and dangerous dogs in the electoral areas, more often than not, those dogs come from the municipality. Some even come from neighboring regional districts. And in the few cases I get quite a few calls, Saratoga Beach, where they're running at large. 3-year-old girl was knocked down. Just last Saturday, I got a call, and one fellow had his dog ripped apart by a big dog from Campbell River. And everybody says, oh, that's an off-leash beach. Just for the record, there is no off-leash beaches, correct?
Sarah, no, sorry, to answer your question. Saratoga Beach, below the high tide line, we ask that people keep leashed, but we're not applying our bylaw below the high tide line at Saratoga.
But there's no recourse because they hop back in their car and they're gone. And the same with a local farmer that has had his cattle chased just last week. And again, the person gathered the dogs, threw them in the car and took off. So we're very limited. So my question about the fees for licenses is that how much do we recoup from our dog control from the sale of the licenses? Is it a small percentage?
Currently, the way the contract is set out, the CVRD retains 100% of all dog license sales, whether they be sold through our office, animal control, Ships Point, or SPCA. 100% is coming back to CVRD of the dog license sales.
So this will help a little bit with the budget? Do you think we can look forward to more patrols, or?
We sell an average 1,200 dog licenses a year. So it's not going to be a huge increase too, yeah.
Good to know. Okay, anything on that? On the animal control bylaw amendment for receipt? All in favor? And we have the recommendation. Second on the recommendation. Any further discussion? All in favor? That carries too. Now, the noisy bylaw amendment report for receipt. I think we've covered some of this already, but we'll delve into it. And move forward.
So the noise control report outlines the legal review. It's been over since 2018. Staff started an in-house review and updated the existing noise bylaw, as well as the proposed changes from that review. 2018, bylaw staff began an in-house review of the current CVRD noise bylaw as it relates to noise complaints regarding properties zoned for industrial and commercial use. In 2019, a study of best practices from other regional districts, as well as a legal review, was undertaken. The results of the preliminary review acknowledge that the CVRD's existing noise bylaw was last updated in 2010. Noise complaints make up approximately 20% of all bylaw files. The majority of noise complaints are from commercial or industrial activities, and the current noise bylaw uses hours of operation for enforcement measures on those properties that are zoned industrial. On March 2nd, 2020, following a staff report that outlined the findings from the review and recommended next action, the board directed staff to further review changes to the noise regulation bylaw. This was specifically in relation to commercial and industrial properties and the use of decibels, or dBs, to help mitigate noise complaints on these properties. Further legal review of the existing noise bylaw was conducted and the suggested changes added to the current bylaw. This is attached as Appendix A to the report. It was not recommended to pursue dB levels on commercially zoned properties at this time. This was largely due to the wide range of different commercial properties in our region and the challenges of applying one set of decibel levels to the wide range of our commercial properties. Everything from restaurants to campgrounds are considered commercial in our zoning. So we moved forward to explore further decibel levels on industrial properties. In order to find an appropriate dB level to apply to industrial noise, a review of other regional district noise bylaws for decibel levels, capturing decibel levels locally by bylaw staff in random locations and job sites, and additional legal review was conducted. The level of dBs found to be the most applicable to the CVRD and our industrial zones was 65 dBs. We found other reference to this range in existing noise bylaws, as well as from capturing sound levels ourselves. With the construction that's been going on at our own building, I had the opportunity to take levels from construction crews that were working both inside and outside quite often, as well as some meetings to get the range that we felt comfortable with. Staff also took dB levels at other sites when they were out, if they're out on a noise complaint, just to get a range and idea. So for reference, a quiet park is 45 decibels. Traffic going by on Cumberland Road from the staff entrance, which is the back of our building, is 70 decibels. Generator just outside these doors here, on the side of the school district building from the totem pole, the front, is 60 decibels. Average conversation level is 60. And this morning at committee, when I was sitting at the back of the galley there, 60 to 70 with the microphones on is the range. And it's not working right now, but it's around 60 with the microphone. So just to give us all an idea of where we came up with the 65. The specific amendments are included in the draft bylaws attached. Sorry, I'm repeating myself about that. The definitions are for industrial use means any of the following uses as defined in the rural Comox Valley zoning bylaw number 520, listing out the specific industrial uses in that bylaw, as well as a definition for point of reception. That would be where staff is standing to take that measurement and reading. And residential premise. So residential premise is anything under Part 700 of residential use in the zoning bylaw. In addition, the prohibition would be added to the bylaw for industrial noises. And this is where it comes, this is how the offense is written out. So it would be in addition to the prohibitions imposed, no person shall commit, cause or permit the commission of an act on real property used for industrial purposes, which results in the emission of noise that is in excess of 65 decibels, audible at a point of reception on a separate legal parcel containing residential premises. So that would be me standing at the neighbor, if they're residential, on their side at the point of reception to take that level. And from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. So any decibel level would apply to those industrial zone properties from after 9 p.m. and before 8 a.m. in the morning. So we have many that still run till 11 or midnight at night, usually machine shops. So this is to curb them on the noise level if they abut a residential premise. If they are next to another industrial property, this would not apply, just the affected residential. With these changes to the CVRD's noise bylaw staff would utilize sound detectors in a subjective manner, only as a guide and not solely for the use of the issuance of municipal tickets. The changes will also greatly assist in reducing noise from industrial properties when a complaint is received from a residential property. The MTI bylaw will also need to be updated to include the prohibition of industrial noise, as we're adding it to the bylaw. No increase of fines for the MTI bylaw are proposed. So to add that ticketable offense, we keep in line at 500 with the other ticketable offenses in the ticketing bylaw currently. Excuse me. The recommendations on this report are that the board consider giving readings to bylaw number 626, being the Electoral Areas Noise Control Regulation bylaw, number 102-210, amendment number 1, as attached to the staff report. And further that, the board consider giving readings to bylaw number 627, being Municipal Ticket Information bylaw number 104-210, amendment number 18, to reflect the changes outlined in the staff report.
What was that?
Okay, yeah.
Do we have questions? Yes, we do. Come here.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks again, Amanda, for this. I just want to clarify the new regulations around the 65 decibels. That's only for commercial and industrial. If another homeowner has noise that's above that level, does this noise bylaw also impact them? This is currently to just be applied for industrial. Okay.
This is new. We're going to apply it to industrial to start, commercial possibly down the road. It will not affect residential premise to residential premise. The noise bylaw is clear for times for that, as is the standard. The bylaw, the definition for industrial use in the noise bylaw now it's industrial uses. So it's outlined anything industrial as far as the zoning bylaw. But from our legal review, the lawyer who assisted with this one was clear. If it is a residential property or property that's not zoned industrial that is conducting an industrial activity that is outlined in this definition, whether they're zoned for it or not, this would apply.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good to know.
So that would apply for your domestic industrial, your TUPs, like anything that allows that industrial aspect to a residential property.
If said activity were happening on a residential property that didn't have a TUP, like who were just doing this, either they didn't realize that they weren't allowed to do this, would that would be then enforceable?
It'd be enforceable through the noise bylaw, but if we had an activity that wasn't zoned, it would be a land use complaint.
Okay.
That would be how we would address the use. If the use is noisy and the use isn't permitted, we address the use.
Okay. The use versus the noise first. Okay.
Robert?
Thank you. Have we, I mean, I assume you're familiar with the types of complaints we receive, but the 9 p.m. to me seems late. You know, a lot of people like to enjoy their evenings, especially for the 5 months of the year where the weather is nice. And I'm just wondering how that 9 p.m. got there, or whether we know that if it was earlier, it would affect the conduct of business of existing businesses that have certain practices.
The 9 p.m. is pretty standard in template across the province. Some of our surrounding municipalities, it's as late as 10. So we're in line, definitely. It's no earlier than 8, no later than 9. These are properties that are zoned to be there. We can't reduce them down any further. So we're just asking them in the evenings that they keep it down.
Okay.
During the day, some shops are closed at 6. They're closed at 4:30. But we do have a variety that are running later. We have one that runs 24/7. They do so in a way that we rarely, if ever, get a noise complaint. That's their choice to run their shop that way. They're trying to be the best neighbor they can be. So 9 o'clock's, it's how we've ran it for some time. The issue we're hearing is the evening hours. People would like, you know, they're aware they live next to industrial. They would like it to taper down at some point.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I'm very happy to see that dances, concerts, and fairs are exempt. So I can bring my biggest amplifier to the next dance and crank it up. Unless, of course, it's over 65 dB. Heaven forbid. My question was around construction, and I realized it's 7 a.m. start till 9 p.m. because, you know, usually you get the house construction in the summer, and they pretty well start as soon as it's light because they're trying to get that darn thing built. But so I didn't realize that it was exempt. There is so the 65 dB, we have a dB meter, obviously, you can take to the adjacent property and check the sound level. Because I'm thinking specifically of a certain property where the neighbor runs an excavator for fun, and disturbs all the neighbors. So that, obviously, if it's a heavy machinery being operated on private property, non-industrial use, it still complies to the 65 dB from the neighborhood property. Is that correct?
It would. We have to be careful. People are permitted, the bylaw is permissive to develop their property. I know that the file you're speaking of, that particular individual is never out there past 9 p.m. or before 8. It's a couple hours midday. So this would not affect that particular, it wouldn't assist us to alleviate any noise for that neighborhood with this, the way it's written. So industrial use is industrial or commercial. Like it doesn't mean if you or I were doing some land clearing that we'd have to be out there after 9 p.m. for it to apply. So we're still going to look at, is the use permitted? And people are permitted to develop their property, use equipment from time to time, whether it be falling trees or the excavator. This isn't what it's set up for. This is for those industrial uses after 9 p.m.
Okay, thank you. That's all mine. Any other questions? Then we are on receipt. All in favor? That carries. And recommendation. Move to second recommendation. Any further discussion? I see no lights. All in favor? Also unanimous. Okay, so the completion of the Denman Island, Hornby Island evacuation guidelines. This should be interesting.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors, and George Dirksen, the Deputy Emergency Planning Coordinator, is here to present the evacuation guidelines for Denman and Hornby. And there's 2 recommendations, one for each island.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here today to present a very brief introduction to the evacuation guidelines for Denman Island and Hornby Island, and to seek approval to make a non-confidential version of these guidelines available to the public. Although very basic guidelines were developed in 2015, these new guidelines are a complete revision, I believe much improved, and have little resemblance to the original. If I can have next slide, please. These guidelines have been designed specifically for first responders to be used in the field, as well as for training purposes. The primary goal in their development was to make them both useful and user-friendly, and the feedback we've received so far has been very positive. Throughout the development process, we worked closely with first responders and other stakeholders and tailored the guidelines for each island. The title page, and I have a binder here as an example. So the title page is right on the front of the binder, and it immediately identifies where the most critical information can be found. All of the sections contain valuable information, but these are the most likely to be used during a response. The evacuation checklist was designed with the incident commander in mind, which is typically the fire chief. This list is a tool to assist the incident commander when an evacuation may be required and can be extremely helpful for someone with little experience in that area. The door-to-door notification section was designed with the RCMP and search and rescue in mind. Search and rescue would go door-to-door, typically go door-to-door when an evacuation alert or evacuation order is declared, and they would be instructing residents to prepare to leave and giving them key information. At this time, they would also collect information on residents, such as those refusing to leave or where someone may need assistance. The traffic control checklist was designed primarily for the RCMP and looks at the most efficient methods of moving people off of the island via the roadways. Then we have our maps section. If you go to the next slide, please. So each island is divided into evacuation zones. There's 7 on Denman Island and 8 on Hornby Island. The maps section includes an overall map, including all of these evacuation zones, plus there's also a map for each individual zone. They're designed to be printed on 11 by 17 format, which makes them easily readable. As you can see, if you can see it, on the legend here, the map includes an assortment of information that can be useful during an evacuation. On this little snip here, you can see an assembly point identified as A8 in the yellow circle. For example, these assembly points, which are across different locations across each island. If a nearby neighborhood were being evacuated, residents in that neighborhood may be instructed to respond to this intersection where transportation would be supplied to take them to a safe location, which might be a ferry terminal or a reception center. In the map section, there's also aerial images identifying potential overflow parking areas near all of the ferry terminals, as we expect that with a lot of traffic attempting to leave the island, these will become choke points. Next slide. There's a lot of information in these guidelines. These are just a few of the highlights. So at-risk population and persons with disabilities. The Hornby and Denman Community Healthcare Society has been excellent to work with, and they recognize the value of identifying at-risk individuals. They have clients on both islands that could be considered vulnerable, plus they are aware of others that may need assistance, such as the homeless. They are willing to share what they can during an evacuation, and they have mentioned that there is a possibility of creating a homeless registry. Domestic animals and livestock, some folks may refuse to evacuate if they feel their animals are at risk, so it's important that we ease their concerns and ensure that they are prepared. Communications, this section primarily looks at who we need to communicate with, what is the message that we want to communicate, and how we are going to get that message out. Transportation covers all forms of transportation, including land, marine, and air transport. Re-entry and recovery. It is likely that in a large-scale evacuation, a recovery unit would be established early on in the Emergency Operations Center to do advanced planning. And we have guides available to us to assist us through that process. Resources, there is a detailed list of resources for each island. Some of them are generic, but a number of them are specific to that island. And they were primarily given to myself from residents and stakeholders, first responders on those islands. Next slide, please. So moving forwards, hopefully, if approved, there'll be a public version of these guidelines posted on the CVRD website. We anticipate having 2 virtual town hall meetings this year, 1 for each island, a tabletop exercise for each island in 2021, a larger exercise in 2022, and a full review of the guidelines in 2022 as directed in the guidelines. And also increased personal preparedness training. Overall, these guidelines combined with the public education that's proposed and the testing that will be done will definitely benefit each island community. They also support the board's key strategic service outcomes for the emergency program, as well as several actions identified in the strategic priorities. And that is the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Director Arbor.
Thank you so much, George, for the good work and as well as the work from the organizations on Hornby. And I agree, Hornby and the Denman Healthcare is definitely a great partner to have at the table on this one, along with our fire departments and first responders. So yeah, this is a long read, so I did the scan. I didn't do the detail for every eventuality. But this is obviously going to be very useful. The funny thing about the islands is that nothing ever changes, but yet every 5 years, it seems like a lot has changed. So my question would be, is there an updating procedure that you're expecting, that every 2, 3, 4, 5 years that we go back to this document? Is this a living document, or how do you see it playing over? Because some of the resources that you mentioned may change over time, or some of the context.
Yes, it is a living document, and in the plan it identifies that they should be updated every 2 years and exercised every 5 years.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And if you need any assistance for my attendance at the town hall meetings, I'd be happy to partake as well.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. And again, yes, to staff and to George, the great work on, and an asset like this, I think will only help both communities on Denman and Hornby. My question was around those that need to shelter in place. You've mentioned farmers, and I'm kind of thinking of this as through the training I did with the BC Cattlemen's Association with their learnings from the fires up at Williams Lake and thereabouts. Are staff, and I'm assuming, like, how is it going to be communicated to staff, I guess the fire officials, that certain properties with animals may need to stay or may need to re-enter multiple times in order to make sure that animals are taken care of? Do you have a designation or an understanding for that process?
I can tell you in 2019, there was a full updating of a lot of the guidelines done by the province, and a big portion of that was looking specifically at how people who have been evacuated from areas can re-enter those areas. Yeah, so we would definitely be looking at those, and they've developed forms, things that people have to sign, how to identify, when people need to go in, how much time they're given to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we would definitely use those.
I mean, I was at this training, but I didn't see anybody from the islands. And so I'm concerned that some of the farms and some of the folks that have large animals may not be aware that that's a possibility. And for them to know what the procedure is, like that they have the forms, that they know that either they have to display it in certain ways or provide it at checkpoints.
Right.
Would there be and I don't know, Director Arbor, if there is a way of targeting those growers or those farmers so that that information is given to them, that there is that possibility. Yeah. I'm not.
This is looking specifically at Denman and Hornby, where we'll certainly share that information when we do the increased emergency preparedness presentations that we plan to do. But it's also something that should be shared right across the regional district, and I'm not exactly sure how we would do that. I know that the Cattlemen's Association definitely have strong links to a lot of the farmers across the regional district. Yeah, so I'll keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that when we're looking at larger animals, we need to educate people that the primary responsibility to take care of those animals is the animal owner, and they need to set up a system in advance if they can. How are they going to remove those animals from the island if they need to? Yeah, so that would be a
Yeah,
big piece
there's a
of that
whole
as
amount
well.
of training of like a buddy farm that they can then go to
Yes.
that has the, obviously the equipment, the feed, ability to house those animals. That's usually the way that either dairy or beef cattle kind of are transported. So is animal movement sort of considered in the evacuation?
It's mentioned in the evacuation guidelines. Again, it's something that we would have to educate on, with the primary responsibility being the owner. And also just let you know that when, in instances like this, if there was a large evacuation, we'd also be looking to the Ministry of Agriculture, who have a lot of experience in moving animals, to help us out in that situation.
For sure. And I'm picturing fire as the main reason for evacuation, but are there would there be other incidences that, you know, an entire island would have to be evacuated?
Fire is certainly the biggest risk for Hornby and Denman. Other reasons could be if there was, say, a tanker fire out in the strait,
Right.
and there was, you know, the wind was blowing in the direction of the islands, and you didn't know what was in that wind. We may look at doing some large-scale evacuations, but also in that instance, we'd more than likely be looking at sheltering in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Great work.
I hate to be pernickety, but I would remind the directors to actually address the staff through the chair, so we can have the proper protocols, because sometimes it kind of goes on and on. So, but that's fairly fairly normal for our group here. We're not the strictest, but so that kind of wraps that up. That we go okay on Denman and Hornby. Hopefully we'll never have to use this. I know that during the Great Fire in the 30s, the Navy actually positioned naval vessels off the coast to help with the Merville fire, just in case they had to evacuate people in those days. So. Okay, so we're on receipt on that. All in favor? That carries. Move one. Any discussion on one? Seeing none, all in favor? And move two. And second on two. All in favor? That carries. Okay, Seal Bay grant application. Okay, we like grants.
Thank you, Chair and Directors, and Mark Harrison, Manager of Parks, is here to present this report and answer any of your questions.
Good afternoon. So I'm just here to seek approval for submission of a grant. This one is for Seal Bay Park, would be for the Community Economic Recovery Infrastructure Program grant, and proposing that for the expansion of Bates Road parking area in Seal Bay, and for the upgrading of the Copeland Loop Trail into a fully accessible trail. So the grant would be for, within the document here, it was $510,000, but I actually just got Class C cost estimates today for Bates Road, and it's an extra $15,000. So we're looking at more like $525,000. Both of these items have been identified within the Seal Bay Nature Park and Forest Management Plan, which was completed in 2019 as action items. So this grant is a provincial grant. It is for 100% of the project. It is an upfront grant, and then any cost overruns would have to be covered in-house. So yeah, I guess that's about it. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Any questions, Director Hamir?
Great, thanks through the chair. I was really glad to see this application, and I was just wondering if there were any other shovel-ready projects that I'm assuming this was originally going to be funded through Community Works. Or was that the plan? And are there any other potential community works type projects that could also be put into this pot?
Yeah, through the chair. Thanks. That's a great question. It is slated for community works funds. The base road project was planned for next year, 2021, and then the Copeland Loop was planned for the year after in 2022. Right now, Parks itself, our department, we don't have anything else, any other projects that are shovel ready that would actually meet the requirements of this grant application. That being said, there is an ability to have 2 submissions with this grant. So there could be a possibility that recreation or other departments could apply on this as well.
Thank you.
Another question? Director Arbor.
Just tease me with that one. So when you say 2, is this the type of grant where they allow 1 per community?
Yeah, through the chair. My understanding is it's 2 submissions for the region.
For the region, but not including the municipalities.
Oh, here comes the
Because my question,
moment of truth.
My real question would be whether area A, B, and C could all be considered separate communities.
So through the CEO to the chair, I can possibly help answer that question. So this program is just recently announced, so we've just been scanning over the eligibility criteria. But the way the eligibility criteria are worded is that each eligible applicant can apply up to 2 applications. As a regional district, we can submit them for each settlement area within our regions, but again, we are limited by that 2 application number. So with respect to this potential application coming forward, I will be bringing this funding program forward to our budget manager kickoff meeting tomorrow, and certainly be soliciting any other potential applications that we can submit before the October 29th deadline.
Thank you. Thank you. And the only reason I ask is it is a community economic recovery infrastructure program, and I know it was kicked around a little bit at the task force from what I saw from their notes. And I just want to ensure that we're not missing out on other opportunities, which I'm not aware of. I don't have one, but I know that task force is looking at a number of projects and options. So I'm still in favor of this one, knowing there's another opportunities lying out there for recreation or otherwise.
Mr. Chair and directors, yeah, we won't, these are early days. The program's just been announced. We're working this out through the task force, through our municipal partners to make sure we take full advantage within the Comox Valley, but don't compromise ourselves. At this point, I would endorse the proposals. We can sort it out at the board as we get more information and we see what other projects may align. There are different program types too. So we want to make sure that that may also provide an opportunity for other applications. And we'll vet this and sort it out at the board if we have to before the applications are made.
And perhaps if I can, to expand on that. So there are 4 key streams that are being funded under this program. One being community economic resilience, another being destination development, also unique heritage infrastructure, and the last being rural economic recovery. So those are fairly broad headings, but there are specifics that fall under each of those. Correct.
Thank you for making the streams clear. We're rural, so we can apply. Anything else? Sounds great. Okay, so on receipt, all in favor? And there's a recommendation attached. Moving seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor? That carries unanimously. Oh, the old shingle spit boat launch application grant. Moving seconded on receipt. Over to Mark.
Yeah, through the chair. As you have mentioned, this grant has come before us before. Again, we are seeking approval for submission of the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant application for the replacement of the shingle spit boat launch on Hornby Island. This is a federal program and it's meant to support small, rural, and remote communities. So just for history, we got we took on the single spit boat launch in 2017. In 2018, we found out that it really needed to be fully replaced. We applied for a grant under this ICIP grant, but under a different stream, under the Community Culture and Recreation stream, and we were not successful. So what we'd like to do is to reapply for this grant under the under a different stream, which is the Rural and Northern Communities grant stream. And in this case, because the population is less than 5,000, we would be eligible for up to 100% of the costs. So with this grant, my understanding is that it is a claims-based grant. So you'd have to pay upfront for that, and then you'd get reimbursed for that. Happy to take any questions about those.
Director Arbor's just chomping the bit here.
I'm not jumping. It's a boat ramp. I used it yesterday to take my boat out for the winter. And actually, my first comment on the boat ramp is it's excellent at high tide, which I always use it at high tide. Low tide, not so good. So just for this one, yeah, I like the option 1, and then I like that you put option 4 as well. If option 1 is not successful, then to pursue that BC Ferries partnership for later down the road. So that I was glad to see that in the report. It's the same program we applied to last year, correct? And if I may, did we get any indication at the time that this could be a competitive proposal? Like, did we get any feedback at the time from the funder?
Yeah, through the chair. So this is the same grant, but it's a different stream. So last time we applied for the community and recreation stream, and this is the northern recovery stream, which actually has an outcome that looks for promoting air, road, and marine infrastructure. Yeah. So it fits in really well with one of the core outcomes. My understanding is that the grant last year was 6 times over what they could actually dish out. So I think that the competition was pretty fierce. What we found out by calling them is that they think it's a fairly good application. But what they look at is all the applications for that entire region. So there might have been other federal funding that was coming from another source for housing or something like that might have impacted that decision. So they weren't really completely sure.
Well, as always, local government is just one step above the nonprofit sector in that we have great ideas, and the government offers different funding, and we try to morph our programs to meet whatever criteria of the day is out there. And so this looks to me like it's got a good chance. And I would say that I don't think I'm being too alarmist when I say that there isn't going to be a lot of grant funding in the near future. I don't think so. We better take advantage of what's out there now. Anything else? Okay, on shingle spit, all in favor? And recommendation. No more discussion, all in favor of that. That carries. Beach fire program. Moving second on receipt. Over to Mark again.
Thank you, through the chair. Based on the Parks and Greenways Service renewal plan, one of the items that was listed in the parks section was to consider exploring, the cancellation, suspension, or what have you of the beach fire program. So staff have taken some time to review those programs. This year in 2020, all our beach fire programs were suspended due to COVID. Those beach fire programs have, the beach rings themselves have been in place since about 2002. We have beach rings at Goosepick Park, at Little River Crescent Beach, and at Joe Walker Park. In 2009, we actually took on a more robust beach fire program at Goosespit, and the others kind of remained with fire rings. So the Little River Crescent Beach, that's actually on lands that are owned by BC Ferries. We don't have a formal agreement in place, but through my conversations with the terminal manager there, they are supportive of that program and are willing to come up with an agreement in principle for that use. It costs approximately $7,000 a year, which includes about $2,000 of firewood to run each year. The Joe Walker program is, it doesn't really have any more tangible costs than just the maintenance of that park itself. But Goose Pit, that's right now is costing us $75,500 each year to operate. And staff believe that there is an opportunity here to reduce some of that expense while still maintaining the high social benefit of the fire rings and through a service reduction. So the beach fire program is supported by the local fire chiefs. It does help deter illegal fires and fires that are in more higher risk areas. So at this time, staff are recommending that we continue with the beach fire program at Goose Bend, but with a reduced service, and that we continue with the beach fire program at Little River and at Joe Walker in 2021. And again, this is under the assumption that we're not in the same situation. If we're under the same kind of rules now with COVID, then we could be looking at a full suspension again. Happy to take questions.
No doubt. Director Arbor, you're first.
Yes, thank you. And I mean, I have to say the Parks Department had done such an incredible job with the COVID renewal plan, and I think it's good to go back and say, hey, you know, there's some values that we're identifying here to the community, and also, as you say, as the fire chief said, maybe you've got leakage elsewhere. So your presentation was really good, and I'm in support of this course of action for sure.
Thank you very much. Director Mayor?
Yeah, I concur. That was my comment as well, that I wouldn't want to see the elimination of the Goose Pit fire program. I think it is, as you mentioned, like a safer place for people to congregate. I was just quite wondering about the, I think I read the encouragement of hibachi, or I guess for people to bring their own combustibles. Can you explain how that might be sort of put out in the community? How would you advertise that?
Yeah, through the chair. Thanks. It's a good question. I think that's probably more a communications question, but I think that we could make it known that just in terms of air quality, you can still have bring your portable hibachis or your portable fire rings that are gas ignited and still have a quote unquote fire on the beach without having the smoke. So that's kind of where that's at. And just so you know, in this year, in 2020, we did still allow that to happen. So there were families that were still making use of hibachis and having family kind of outings without the fires this year.
Okay, so primarily though, natural gas, are you thinking coals as well, or is that allowed?
No, they're propane.
Yeah, sorry, the propane. Yeah, okay. Well, that would be interesting to see that going forward, if we could sort of shift people's the culture of that area to do that some more. So I'll look forward to that and seeing how that turns out. And then the other two sites, I don't think they're quite as well known for people who want to have a beach fire. And again, would that roll out in a communication plan in general? Like, are you funded to do any kind of communications?
Yeah, through the chair. We don't really necessarily communicate or promote those, but what does happen, or what's been happening in the past, is that if people come to Goose Pit and they see that all the fire rings are taken, because there's only 10 there, then we would direct them to Little River. So that being said, when I had those conversations with the terminal manager, she said that it actually gets quite a bit of use and they're well used. There are 4 at Little River, and she said it's mostly families that use that, and that's kind of why they're really supportive of it. And she said she was quite surprised, but they get a lot of use.
Thank you.
Well, what would it take to get Fortis on board as a sponsor and just wire everything right to natural gas? put a tuning in every time it burns out, you got to start it again. I guess that's 30 years down the road if we're lucky, or maybe not. Well, thank you very much. That sounds like a good plan. I know that it's was a big bone of contention back in the day when we started this whole thing around the fire rings, and I think we've proven that through proper management and burning proper clean dry wood that we can have something that's pretty well acceptable to the greater population, and definitely, like you say, when the social values are very important, even more so with the pandemic. So that's the report. Anything on that? Call the question on the report. All in favor? That carries. Move on. And second? And nothing on one. Call the question on one. All in favor? That carries. And 2 is moved as well. Any more discussion on 2? All in favor? Carries. Okay, so how are we doing here? Does anybody need a little break? I think we better take 5. Yeah. I'm going to take 5 and be right back. Okay. Call the meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee back to order. And we are on item 10, the 2024 Financial Budget Amendment Function 620 for receipt. Over to staff.
And we'll pass it off to Mark again. He's been doing a great job, and we'll explain this one for you and answer your questions.
All right. Thanks. Through the chair to the board. So what I'd like to present today is a financial plan amendment under the Hornby Island Parks and Greenways Service to account for the active transportation grant that we received for the Gull Road Trail on Hornby Island. So this was initially we had a $25,000 capital commitment under reserves for construction of part of this trail. In February 2020, we received a grant that would be valued up to $35,000, 70% of the cost. And now we just want to amend the actual financial plan to show that we've got a $25,000 reserve commitment and up to $35,000 grant commitment for a total budget of $60,000. Happen to take any questions?
Great. So yeah, that's good to see this one back and moving forward. I just want to clarify, I think we applied in February, but got it later. Is that correct? Because I think I remember walking that trail with one of the owners there in April. I don't think we'd received the grant at that time.
Yeah, that's probably correct.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't.
Yeah, just to correct the record, but that's great to see it. And I guess the project hasn't started yet?
Yeah, no, the project has started.
It has? Okay, I missed it. I haven't driven by there. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Seeing no other questions, I'm going to call around receipt. All in favor? And the recommendation. Moved and seconded. All in favor of the recommendation. That carries unanimously. Community Works Fund status report. Oh. Who's speaking to this one?
No one, but if there's any questions, Kevin DeVal is here to answer them for you.
I feel all warm and fuzzy. Okay, Director Harbour, you got something to say?
Yes, it's always my favorite topic when community work shows up. No, it looks good to get the report. I do have, so obviously for REA, we're still, for Bain Sound, we're still holding quite a bit for probably capital works. I've got a fairly significant reserve building. I know we are proceeding, so this is just for consideration of staff. I know we are proceeding with the item for EA playgrounds under Fanny Bay Playground, and I think we've got that geared up for 2021. And I know we just did receive some a request over the weekend around what I see as almost energetic in a different community in Union Bay around both playground and childcare spaces that, in the case of childcare, that seem to correlate to findings of the Economic Task Force. But I was just wondering if staff could consider whether there are indeed synergies to build two playgrounds rather than one. But whether that would be community works or other channels or other grants, not a decision today, but I thought I'd put that on the radar as a probably consideration for community of a request that's a little bit higher than usually grant and aid would support. So I'm just wondering if we can put our thinking hats on this.
Yeah, I think for the director's benefit, we received an inquiry through the director for this additional program. By all means, we'll review it with the society and or the group and bring forward any suggestions on opportunities or synergies to work with this and what the options might be.
And Director Hamir.
Thank you. I'm also sort of thinking in future, if we are successful with the SAREC grant paying for the Bates Road parking lot, Do staff have other projects in mind of what we could do with some of the funding that we would have otherwise put to that?
Anything but Hornby or Denman.
Anything but Hornby or Denman?
Just kidding, folks.
So through the chair to the director. So right now we did have a number of projects identified that have been reported previously to the board that are in the last 4 years of the current financial plan. Given we are now in the process of commencing with the 21 to 25 financial planning process, I will again be reaching out to the budget managers as of tomorrow's meeting with them to solicit ideas for what projects will be included in this current or upcoming 5-year plan, and then we can certainly bring back that to the board. Nothing specific comes to mind at this point. But again, we do want to start getting a bit of a forward look with the remaining 3 years of funding that we'll be expecting under the current Community Work Funds agreement. So we'd certainly like to be able to give the board a fulsome understanding as to what that may look like.
Sure, could I have a follow-up to that? Just wondering with COVID recovery, we have we've identified some priorities, and there does seem to be some overlap between what the ERTF is asking for and what could be funded through Community Works. And just wondering if we're putting our mind to, if we have some excess capacity because of the funding being provided through other grants, if any of those could be looked at as well through Community Works.
We can certainly do that. I mean, I would certainly be taking a look at any of the projects that are currently, identified to be funded under Community Works funds and see if there is any potential for eligibility under these, numerous programs that have recently come forward. Then stemming from that, we can kind of see what the balance of the internal ask will be and try to prioritize those accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Director Arbor.
Thank you, because it is, you're just waking me up that it is that time of year where staff starts to think about things. So this one you'll be happy to know is in our wheelhouse. So inside our services, and obviously we're having discussions around transit and transportation, and it's hard for me at some of those meetings because we are thinking regionally, but in the case of the Hornby and Denman one, obviously we have some lingering questions around the future of the service there for the pilot projects around the bus. Yesterday, I saw that the Qualicum Parksville School District has purchased electric school buses. And that got me thinking about a conversation that we keep talking about potentially having through our transit service, but that potential collaboration with SD71. And looking at the because right now we know we have to do something, come to some kind of decision probably in the next year on those buses. But I do know transit is definitely an eligible category in terms of Community Works, and I do know that the amounts accumulating in Denman Hornby, unless staff has specific projects, typically it's parks that benefits. But I would be quite interested in looking at opportunities. The problem is just the capacity, whether we have the capacity to engage in those types of discussions. I realize that is a constraint, and it also requires a willing partner. I did talk to the chair of the school district 71. She's fully on board. She's on the bus committee as well for the island, so quite familiar. But yeah, I just thought I'd raise it today so that it gets put on the table anyways. Thanks.
Well, I would think that we've got 3 years left. Is that right? For the under the agreement with UBCM and
yeah,
and
correct. So right now we have about $4 million in uncommitted dollars. We are expecting over the next 3 years, roughly another 1.1 million a year. So roughly 3.3 million. That would give us about $7.5 million overall of uncommitted dollars. We currently have about 1.1 million in committed projects based on the current 5-year financial plan. So take that away, you're probably looking at about 6.25 million that, we could be looking at, coming up with strategies how we may want to expend that.
Of course, gas tax dollars is the only discretionary money that comes to the electoral areas that we can actually use. So I would suggest that we be very diligent about how we're going to approach it. got a couple of years left. I know that there's a good relationship right now with the federal government, but you know, they're understand they're poised to run a $1.268 trillion deficit. So it just raw us off the tongue, $1 trillion. So, you know, how are they going to tax the way back out of that? We don't know. So we'll have to wait and see. We might be at the end of the line. I noticed that, you know, broadband connectivity is in there, you know, transit's in there, active transportation's in there, which is really great. But of course, we run up against the brick wall when we run up against the MOTI when it comes to the right of way of on the connecting roads, something our municipal partners don't have to deal with. But I think you know, best bang for your buck. I was amazed that at a recent meeting of FCM, you know, Zoom meeting, that I think I said this before at one of our meetings, that Al Kamir, who's the president of the Alberta Association of Regional Municipalities, actually came out and said that connectivity is number one. It should be like water and sewer. It should be absolutely mandated, because what we have now is a two-tiered system. And, you know, with you got your everything from medical to business to, as I said earlier, you know, education. So it's absolutely essential. So maybe we'll see some movement on that. I know we're going to deal with it later on with a letter. So, well, thanks very much for your cheery news. At least we're moving in the right direction. And like I say, it's actual real money, so we can actually do something with it. So that. No further comments on receipt. All in favor? That carries. And there's no recommendation on that one. New business, tell us, prioritization of the rural connectivity. Correspondence for receipt. Any comments on that one? Director, did I get you? I'm sorry, do it again.
This seems to be.
Hit him again.
Thank you. This seems to be a similar request as we. Oh no, is this the one that got kicked from the board to us?
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's why it looks so familiar. Sorry, I just had time to scan it quickly. So what should we do with this one? Did we want to, because yeah, we had a fairly extensive conversation on the board level, in which my own conclusion was nobody is forcing us to write a letter. I'm not sure that a letter that speaks directly to TELUS is the way to go. Like, I think we can write our own letter about some of the gaps that we're seeing in the corporate, but I'm not even sure if letters are going to make that much of a difference. So I'd be on the no action, no course of action for now until things clarify. We're waiting for announcements. We're waiting for announcements and budget for the federal. I would say let's wait to see if they actually create some kind of fund specific to broadband, how it gets distributed, and unless staff has a different idea. That's good. Yeah, so that'd be my idea.
I think the throne speech alluded to it, but we've heard that before. Director Mir.
Yeah, I concur. I don't think we need to do any action, since the letter was asking us to request that rural connectivity be part of the throne speech, and that's come and gone. So I don't think there's any kind of impetus for us to have to write anything. So
It'll end up in the round file. Okay, so we don't need to move anything then, just on receipt. On receipt then, all in favor, that carries. And then we go through all the addendum stuff and we come up with the Economic Recovery Task Force, Industry Advisory Business Case, Action Plan Submission, Summary Report. For receipt.
Mr. Chair and Directors, so this is a late item, but a very important one provided by the Economic Recovery Task Force, of which you are a member and can probably give lots of background to the directors. But I just wanted to mention that upon my read, there are 2 actions you might want to consider. There are a number of recommendations for consideration to the regional district. You might ask staff to do a report and turn that around as soon as possible with respect to acting on those recommendations and what quick wins there may be or what other activities there may be to act on those. And then there's one item specifically that has a bit of a time constraint, and that is in the letter they allude to the initiative of perhaps applying to this recent grant opportunity for a food hub, and that you might direct us to consider working with the CVED staff to put forward that grant application for consideration. So those are two action items you might want to consider. Staff reporting back to you on the implications of acting on the recommendations and acting on that one which is time sensitive, as the grant application is the end of this month.
Yeah, if I may, we had quite a good discussion. Shop local, arts and culture support, that is more directed at our municipal partners, but agricultural and food security, we talked about the 4 streams, that fits nicely into the rural stream. Of course, there's a lot of work that CVEDs had done for a previous grant funding. Then the idea was to work with our staff in conjunction with the CVED staff to get it out the door as soon as possible. It's fairly off the shelf, my understanding. And we can get it together, and I think the deadline's the 29th, is it not? So it's not a lot of time, but it definitely pertains to the rural areas. We also have an application into Investment Ag for a farm plan, agricultural plan for the Comox Valley, which is long overdue. So we got 2 initiatives you can sort of get going. Well, one's already going in stream right now. They've already got an application in for the first one. So I would think that we can work constructively together to get it out the door. And our understanding when we had that little meeting with the minister is think big. I think that was what she kept saying. You guys got to think bigger. So I'm going to turn it over to directors for thoughts. Director Muir.
Great, thanks. You know, I appreciate all the work that the RTF has put into looking over all the action plans and coming up with the priority list, and, you know, totally agree with the list that's come up. I guess my concern is that CEREP funding is available to not just the regional district, but also the municipalities. And I'm hearing that the other municipalities are going to be applying for funding that could be potentially competing with this. So, I mean, and so are we with the Bates Road. I'm just wondering how much coordination, like how much information our staff sharing with each other about who's putting in what application for what.
There's at least 2 streams where coordination is happening. It's at the economic task force level, where you have the mayors and chairs of all the organizations, and then the CAOs, and through these reports, the various staff are doing some. The problem is that a grant program has just been announced, and there's less than a month to turn around a rather rigorous application form. And it does enable each one of these jurisdictions, Cumberland, Courtenay, Comox, and the regional district, to apply and potentially all be awarded funds, potentially, right? It doesn't restrict you from not doing that. So I think there is some consideration of priorities. There will be some support requested of the various local governments for each other's applications. But I do think it's well worth putting forward 2 applications for each jurisdiction. That definitely is worth doing.
Okay. And I guess would it come across as a stronger application if it's something that is supported by our ERTF? I mean, would they be sending a letter of support as well? Is that what we're expecting?
I think, yes, my advice is that those that have the support of the task force that have demonstrated a process of reaching out to the broader community and responding directly to economic needs is a very strong component of an application.
And if I may, a second question.
One more.
Specifically on the food hub, I appreciate the really short-term turnaround time. I did have a look at that previous food hub application that CVED's submitted, And I personally would not support a food hub application going forward where funding was going to private companies. I'm not sure if staff are aware of that was the premise of the previous application, that funding was going towards a non-publicly owned entity as one of the sites, that it's a 4-site hub, that it's not a centralized one, which kind of goes against what I think the community is asking for. Something very much in line with what's happening at our curling rink, where we've got a nonprofit group that's using public space, providing food for a number of different outlets that can be, and that function could be added on with commissary kitchens and all kinds of economic development. The proposal that CVED's previously put in totally shut out that opportunity. So if I was to suggest, I would like staff to work with CVEDs to put forward a food hub proposal, but also to include the Comox Valley Food Policy Council, as they've already been working on the idea of a food hub, and what that would look like. That would be more in tune with, I think, what the community is asking for.
Well, I think the Commissary Connect was the piece that you're talking about, and Minister Popham did bring that one up specifically, but I think it's more a model, you know, the card lock kitchen kind of a concept, shared kitchen, which would be great. I mean, we're right now in an economic downturn where we may actually come up with we're not going to be able to build something, obviously, for $1 million or less, but we might be able to come up with something that we may just be lucky enough to find a space that will fit the needs and get into a lease scenario, at least for the beginning. I mean, equipment can always be moved. And also about the 4 streams, I think that the community infrastructure resiliency one, I think that's where Courtney and Comox are going down that stream. Comox wants to get on board their marina concept, and Courtney's mayor keeps talking about a bridge. It's going to be rebuilt, whether or not that fits the criteria, but I think we're bang on with ours and the rule, and it's something we can do. Maybe I'll check with the CAO here, but it's something that can lie within this committee, can it not? For the most part, we can make the application through the board, obviously, but through this committee, we control it, we own it. So.
Yeah, recognizing it's through the board and you don't meet again before the deadline. Yeah.
Tomorrow's it? No, we don't meet. I'm sorry, we have still got a board meeting end of the month.
Yeah, the board does meet, but not the EA.
Right? Okay, so we'll look for an action item on this. You have to jump in with both feet. And Director Arbor, I haven't been ignoring you, sir. There you go.
Thank you. Well, that's exciting. It makes me think of my many years in nonprofits where you make your strategic plan and the grant opportunity arrives, and we spend most of the time talking about the grant opportunity and how we can funnel our plan into it. To me, the value of the report today is actually to give some guidance around some of the priorities. There were so many elements on there. And I do agree with Dr. Amir. They did a really good job of honing in and assigning tasks to different sectors, to government, to local government, to businesses. So whomever came up with that idea of a task force, that was quite a brilliant thing, wasn't it? Thanks, Theo. So yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, as soon as I received that report, yes, there's funding opportunities, but for me, it's also a funnel, like that letter we got serendipitously this weekend around childcare being identified. It doesn't mean we need to apply for a grant, but there's different ways to resource things. So for me, I'll let those 6 topics sit, and some of those second level priorities as well sit in my mind around what the role of ESC and the CVRD board can be. I mean, there's grant opportunities, but if I even look at our prior report from Community Works, our Area C chair here has quite a lot of dollars, unspent dollars that you could do a lot with, you know, to fund some things that are maybe related to our services or related to these topics that the RTF has identified. So it's really great. And it's really great that there is this funding opportunity to focus the minds of people. It's a little rushed. When you're talking about a month, you get in a bit of a frenzy, but it's also good that there's something tangible for people to talk about. And I'm really happy that they identified the transportation and regional connectivity. So for today, I'd actually support that we send a little note of thank you to the RTF for the work that they have done from the ESC. I think that would be appropriate, and I'd like to thank you, Chair Grieve, for being part of that process on our behalf.
You neglected to mention the 500,000 that you still owe me from the last gas tax. Not that I'm going to let you forget it. I know, your mic stays off. Well, I think that, yeah, I think we have an opportunity here. Obviously, agriculture and food security is right up there. It's something we can actually, that's in our hands, we can actually work on. I would say that we'll have our great brain trust out there work on, you know, what it is they think they want to see in the application, and kind of go with that. I mean, if there's flexibility in it, like I say, such short notice, I don't know how you're going to do it, but if we can get something in, obviously $1 million is the max you can get, but you know, let's think big, like the minister suggested, and get something that is as off the shelf as we can get it, and uses many of the terminologies that they want to see. And I think that we stand a very good chance because, hey, it's our turn. Director.
Okay, thanks. Yes, and apart from the letter, I would support staff to move forward on the food hub idea. And again, recalling the old application that CVET's put in, I think some of it is actually already implemented, because a quarter of the application was for developing a program at North Island College to support new farmers, and that's already happening. So, I mean, I'm not saying to throw out that application, but to more narrowly focus on the numbers that would respond to, I think, what the community's missing still, like a centralized food, like a central space where food can be aggregated from farmers, distributed, value added. I think that's what we're really, that key piece of infrastructure is what we're missing. So I guess after we receive, I'd be happy to put forward that motion.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just trying to find my notes, but I know that both Farmers Institutes correlated a lot on the same issues around aggregation and distribution and small processing, small batch processing. So I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. So I don't think we can go too wrong with it. So on receipt, all in favor? Do we want to make a motion here? Director?
So I'm just, I move that we send a letter of thanks, or I second, I guess, what Director Arbor's letter of thanks idea. And also, staff said that you mentioned a report looking at the entire recommendations of the ERTF.
Yeah, I suggested that a report from staff that looks at how to respond to the recommendations as presented.
Okay, I'll add that to the recommendation. And furthermore, that staff be directed to work with CVEDS and the Comox Valley Food Policy Council to work on a food hub application, if that's supported. Yeah.
That's clear enough. Director.
Thank you. I'll second. Did you want to add the reference to the two Farmers Institute in that motion as well? I heard Chair Grieve mention the two Farmers Institute. Are they, would they be approached as well along with the Food Policy Council? No? Okay.
No, yeah, we can get a lot of support for them. It's just,
I second.
there's a much bigger picture here. This is just getting our foot
I
jammed in
second.
the door, I think.
Yeah.
So.
That's one big motion.
Can we have a red back, please?
It's an omnibus. That's okay.
Yeah, but it's an electric omnibus. Okay.
Okay, so this is just a summary. We can kind of jazz it up a bit, but for staff to send a letter of thanks to the ERTF, for staff to prepare a report looking at all the recommendations as presented in the letter, and further that to work with CVEDs and the Food Policy Council to work on a food hub application.
And staff, yeah. Oh, good. Captures most of it. Okay. Any nays? No nays. That's a horse joke. Okay, all in favor? That carries. So that brings us to the portion of our program where we adjourn to in camera. All in favor? Are we off the air?